No, I absolutely, I go with that very much so. There's one of the things people are always going on about are their well, how many genders can there possibly be then? And the question is, how many people are there? And we don't even know about animals, so except for bonobos, but you know.
So what about you, Alex? What do you think about the motto of identities matter? Do you think that's too broad of a term? Do you think it needs to be a little bit more definitive, or?
No, I don't think it. So I don't think it needs to be too much more definitive. I think that that stuff needs to be broken down for some people, especially because people aren't always. It's easy to end up in your own circle and generalize in such a way that doesn't make sense. I mean, ultimately, in my opinion, identities are descriptions of yourself.
I absolutely agree with you, Alex. And I guess, what do you think, Perfict? Do you think that's a too broad of a way to frame it, or do you think that it's not precise enough? Or?
No, I just think that if somebody's gone to the trouble of breaking down and describing something that they feel is important about their self-identity, least you could do is listen.
And
I'll agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that's probably the best sentiment that you just brought out, Perfict. That no one can honestly disagree with you on that. So I guess we'll just go through the list. But before we go there, I want to do a little shout out to an individual that we have been kind of going to be featuring this week. So we're doing something a little bit new. So the individual we're going to be featuring is by the name of Clarabelle Caitlin. She's a trans individual who is under some situations. We don't know the exact situations. I personally don't. But we're going to, hold on, I'm going to set this up so we can share this. What I'm going to do for Clarabelle is I'm going to link their information in the description tab below, right above the information on the show. So if anybody wants to support them, feel free to follow them on Twitter. They also have a Patreon. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to hopefully edit this later, but I'm going to go over some of the questions in regards to the subject of identity. But before we go into that, I think, does anyone want to share their own personal perspectives in regards to what it means to have a specific identity? Does anybody have an opinion on what identity means to them, or the very notions of their own personal journey when it comes to who they identify as?
Actually, someone else should talk. I want to hear more voices.
What about you, Christy or Perfict? What do you guys think? I mean, do you guys have your own personal take when it comes to identity?
I'm gonna defer to Perfict this time.
Yeah, I don't think I have a personal take on identity as a whole. I mean, but it's a fairly broad topic of everything is covered under identity.
Yeah,
very true.
If you're not going to talk, if you guys aren't going to talk about it, I'm fine with talking about it. I just didn't want to hog this too much.
Yeah, be the one to go first.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of this is a lot of aspects of identity, just in general, are subjective, and a lot of it's come down to just sociocultural stuff. So we obviously most people identify as people. We've made that decision. There's nothing inherent about being a person. If an artificial intelligence, or if there was artificial intelligence that had that was as intelligent as a person, would they be people? And the fact that that's not an easy question for people to answer always really shows how cultural this stuff is. And gender is also very cultural.
And I was gonna, if I can just add to that, and I actually agree with you highly on this, because if you look at the actual trends of what has been defined, for example, on the concept of identity of gender, each culture has its own intrinsic definition of what it means to be a specific gender. If you look at certain Native American tribes, they actually had concepts of the third gender for centuries. Yet the same standard of identity there does not coincide with, for example, the concept of eunuchs in China. You know what I mean? And there's a whole slew of books relating to the concepts of different cultures' concepts of identity. And I welcome everyone, if they ever get a chance, to just kind of go over it and look over that information themselves. But I guess, Christy, Perfict, do you guys have any takes until we move on to the questions?
If you're talking about gender identity in specifically, I mean, when we get I mean, more in a great broad way, we get a sense of identity apart from other people's identity. Like, the world doesn't revolve around us. Around, I guess, 1.5, and once we start getting that, we have your gender comes in somewhere in 3 and 4. I don't subscribe to. It's not. I don't subscribe to. I haven't wrapped my head around gender being just a social construct, because to me, there's a lot of physical things that have to do with gender for me. So
here we've got this situated hopefully now. So we're going to go into the questions now on the notions of identity. So the very first question that is approached is, how can I maintain integrity when requested to use gender pronouns, yet still I am still accustomed to prior pronouns? That's the first question. I think some of these questions are posed by people who maybe aren't unfamiliar when it comes to gender identity or identity in general. So again, these are where the questions are coming from. So do you guys have any takes on that question?
Okay. Can you repeat it?
Yeah. So how can you maintain your integrity when requested to use someone's gender pronouns, yet are accustomed to using pronouns prior to that your entire life? So let me rephrase it. If you had, for example, a relative or someone that you're familiar with, someone you've known your entire life, and you are used to using certain pronouns their entire life, and then all of a sudden they have changed their pronouns, they've changed their identity. What is a good way for a person who is facing this issue, possibly, to get accustomed to this new person's pronouns? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and let me just reframe it in my own answer, because my answer will be my answer will be short. I don't understand not being able to do this. It's one of those things where I switch over in my head so quickly that I don't even bat my lovely eyelashes. I have told the story before where there's somebody I've known for 30 years, and I was introduced to her under one name in a group session, and I didn't, and she's like, why did I do something wrong, or why is she not recognizing me? And it's like, I'm not recognizing because I knew the guy who was there before. And it's I just switched over in my head, so this is the person I'm meeting for the first time, and I didn't even recognize you as anything other than who you are now. So I have no idea. I would love an answer to this question, because my brother called me for the first time since I came out yesterday and kept calling me, well, you're my brother, you're my brother, you're my brother. And I'm like,
yeah, see, I have a similar situation with my own family. Like my mom, I've talked to her about my situation, and and I had a kind of a couple of that happen. I want to be very clear. My mom's very understanding. So is my stepdad. They're the most amazing people I know in my life. They're the reasons why I can go through what I'm doing. But one of the things that my mom did bring up is she mentioned that I'm always going to call you my son. That was brought up, and
yeah.
this is the reason why this person posed a question. So I guess a better way of putting it is, what do you guys think? What is a good answer or a good method we can try to convey to these individuals that don't understand, that may have these troubles in regards to someone's pronouns? Maybe they're not malicious, maybe they're not misgendering or being disrespectful to your identity intentionally. Maybe they just have a hard time. And again, I'm not asking these questions myself. These are the questions that are posted on this philosophical exchange. So what would you think would be a good answer to this individual? Try or perfect?
Well, I'm happy to try weighing in a little bit.
Of course, please.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's something to be said for your mom saying, well, you're my son. But you can say, look, I will always be your baby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But you have to understand that, in a way, there's a part of me I never really was your son. It was never really part. And I've discovered that now. That's something I've found out. And you can share that if that's how you feel. Not everybody does feel that way. There are people who do feel that they were, yes, those are pictures of me when I was a boy. And I was that then, but I'm not that now. And that's how they feel about it. And that can make it kind of confusing over the thing, but you get used to it. What gender to be referring to them at in those situations, if you understand, referencing a photograph.
Go ahead, Christy. Or go ahead, Alex. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's been described pretty well. I think just in general, I mean, it is work for some people. Like because they have a habit. And just like any habit, it takes effort to break it. And I think it's one of those things where you have to realize, even if it's not important to you, it's important to them. Yeah, that's all I got.
Do you have any last bit, Christy? And until we go to the next question?
Yeah. What I was just thinking is, when somebody comes, an actor or somebody in a park playing a role, takes off their costume, you don't continue to call them by the costume they wore. And I wore this costume for a long time, and calling me by that just isn't me.
And I guess at the end of the day, it's just good for me, and this is my own take, but I think, like in the end of the day, that my mom, she accepts who I am. She says it all the time, and I think it's just more of an issue in regards to just a custom of doing something over and over again for years. You know what I mean? My mom's 63, and this doesn't mean it's an excuse but I think it's primarily the issue is my mom's so accustomed to her mannerisms that it's just going to have to be something that's going to just take time for her to get used to change. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I don't know.
Long as you're good with it.
It doesn't bug me. I mean, it does bug me in a way, but for me, it's my mom. I mean, there's rational reasons why a person like my mom would do this. It would be hard for them to change their mannerisms. Again, it doesn't mean that I'm not, it's not something I accept, but it's something I do completely understand. You know what I mean? And she's not doing it maliciously. That's a clear distinction there.
Well, yeah. I was just randomly thinking about the fact that people do that with actors sometimes, where they're this character name,
and the way
that's all they are. This character. Yeah.
And that's why I was thinking like the grimace at McDonald Land instead of when David Bowie died, it ticked me off a little bit that this should have been a hint. This should have been a hint I was coming out to him. It ticked me off a little bit how many Major Toms or Ziggy Stardust were in calling him Major Tom or Ziggy Stardust in the headline. It's David Jones Jr. if you want, really wanted to go nuts, but.
Well, so here's the next question, and this is going to be kind of a floozy, or kind of odd question.
A floozy.
Not floozy. That's the wrong word. A little bit of an off question. But what determines a person's gender identity? Does anybody have an opinion on that?
We don't know.
What affirms a person's gender identity?
Correct. What determines a person's gender identity?
Oh, determines it. Determines it.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. Hey, let me get back to you on that.
I'll make a take on this. People have a variety of associations between what it means to be particular genders, and people are just essentially guessing based off the loose associations they've heard throughout their life, and coming up with the best description they have.
Yeah,
I don't know.
What about you, Christy? Any takes?
No, we honestly don't know. I had a long thing going that I wrote out for Theory of Mind, but and I mean I talked to in the aborted first attempt at this. I talked a little bit about Theory of Mind, but when we have the developmental stages. A child will realize what their gender is, or wait till 32 or 33, which is what a lot of people do. And we don't. It's a chemical. It's some biological. Obviously, with someone like me, or with the two X's, there's a large chance of if I have more than one kid, which 19 years apart I did, that one of them's going to be trans, because that's just kind of the way that works out. But even them, they're not sure why.
So would it be fair to say that everyone agrees that to answer this question in the fairest and broadest way, it's completely subjective? Is that pretty fair? Does everyone agree with that?
It's not that either. That's the problem.
Well, that's partially because of our. We're not going to be able to find a outside perspective to measure or whatnot related to that. because so much of our culture, gender has been made into an important factor. So there isn't a control, or I mean, there are controls out there, but I don't think whatever small areas of the country that where gender is not a bit, where gender is less of a factor, that they're going to accept a scientific study related to that. And like, so it's really hard to make a declaration. Christy?
I'm still here. Sorry, I need to go off. I need to go off screen for a second. I'm still here though. My headphones are still on.
Okay. I was making sure everything was all right. Anyways, yeah, I don't think there's a good way to make that determination outside the cultural aspects that we do know exist, because otherwise every culture would have the same views of gender, and that's not the case.
And you're absolutely right, Alex. And I guess to me, when I say it's subjective, is it's subjective due to the circumstances. And I agree with Christy as well. It's not always subjective either, because who you are is innate to who you are. But when it comes to external forces, I guess the best way I can answer this, I guess the answer is we don't know. I guess that's something for deeper philosophers to kind of go into. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Well, yeah, but they're too busy hitting each other with trolleys. That was just for Perfict. I hope you got it.
I'm not sure.
The trolley problem, you know.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha with trolleys.
So
I said Charlies. Yeah.
Let's just move on to the next question, because that's a kind of a broad question to ask. But again, I'm going down this list. So this question actually could be a little bit more maybe simpler for people to ask or answer. Is the permanent self still attainable? So another way of phrasing this is someone's identity static, or is it dynamic? Or maybe is it both?
Well, there might be essences of a personality that would exist from start to finish, from birth to death. I don't think the idea of a birth to death personality has been something that really philosophy has dealt with any seriousness in a very long time, if possibly ever.
Valid point, Perfect. Christy, Alex, do you guys have any opinions on that question?
I mean, I think in terms of, obviously, in terms of biological factors, those things are biological factors. Those aren't how you describe yourself, and how you describe yourself based on those biological factors is fluid, because it, like, almost inherently, like, I have called myself a boy, a girl, a man, non-binary, like, and so, like, not even that has been said. I've called myself smart. I've called myself stupid. People have called me smart. People have called me stupid. Like, I don't know what exactly about identity outside of the biological factors influencing the emotions related to it. It's not like. So whatever. Okay. I'm gonna have to get into my views on gender dysphoria and a lot of other factors.
And I think that's going to be a good discussion. Go continue, Alex.
What?
Go ahead and continue. I said that would actually be a good thing. I'd like to see you bring up.
Okay, so obviously there's the gender dysphoria, which is, as far as I am aware, the dysphoria relating to being forced to act differently from yourself, to forced to play a role constantly. And then there's the physical dysphoria related to the distress about biological factors not seeming like they're a part of your body. And then there are euphoria aspects that have been described, although once again, it might be the same feeling almost, and it's just their baseline might just be dysphoria. But that's my view, and hopefully I don't accidentally fall hard into transmedicalism, like I did back shortly after high school when Susan's
Alex,
Place was the only place I could find.
Well, Alex, we have a couple of we have an individual here, and I'm going to read their comment, and it's a gender critical type of comment. So their comment is, yeah, but if you were born a man, you're a man. End of. Whatever you think you are, whatever you think you can think that it changes nothing. What's your guys' comments on that person?
Oh, they can go fuck themselves.
I mean,
Alex,
harsh.
That's okay. I was born a woman. I just had the wrong genitals. Are we good with that then?
So I'm gonna explain this real quick. And this person's name is Instant Curry. Instant Curry. I'm gonna explain this to you in the nicest way possible. Please do yourself a favor. Go educate yourself on the difference between biological sex and gender. Those are two distinct same things. They're not the same. Those are two distinct different things. Okay? So find out what gender norms when it comes to societal standards, and go discover what it means in regards to sex. Again, they are not the same thing. So it's up to you to make. You're the one that making the mistake to conflate the two concepts. But anybody have any opinion on what I just said? Alex, Perfict?
Well, I mean, I have an opinion on that comment. I mean, so I've had some arguments on Twitter before. So in general, a lot of times when that occurs, things have been generalized down too far, and they've been simplified in such a way that doesn't make sense in every circumstance, so much so that I've heard people make that argument and diss cis women because they think they're trans because they don't look enough like a woman. So you can end up in ridiculous situations like that. I know several Olympians were also treated that way, and it just there seems to be a lot of there are certain aspects of that seem to be an excuse to fuel a fear. I don't know.
Well, Alex, so let me ask you a question. Since
Sure.
you're a little bit versed in biology, so the next question they asked, Instant Curry asked, is what's the difference between sex and gender? Do you have a take on that?
Sure. Sex is the biological factors that or that relate to how hormones form primary, secondary, tertiary sexual characteristics of the body. Gender oftentimes is how you deal with people outside of that, because you don't check the genitals of everyone you meet. You don't grope every woman just to make sure. Or at the very least, if you are, you need to be arrested because you have violated several laws. But no, seriously, you can't use biological sex to determine the gender of people. It's not a guaranteed method.
Perfect. And Christy, do you guys have any takes on this so far?
Yeah, it's not a terrible metric, but it'd be a very poor tool. Yeah.
I apologize a little bit for just slamming out on that. I mean, I've taken it on as my job to educate people, but there are some days when I am so fucking tired of this. So that was one of those, and so I apologize for it.
That's fine.
I think it's interesting.
I'm questioning whether or not I should ban some Twitter people who are being particularly annoying in my chat.
So real quick, Alex.
I'm lazy about that, though.
So real quick, Alex. So they write, yeah, but how are you supposed to know someone's gender if you generally don't know, but then they get offended when you call them something else? So I'm going to give my answer in regards to both of these characteristics. First, in regards to what's the difference to your question, Instant Curry, tell me, biologically, what characteristics in biology do we see in reality in regards to women wearing dresses, or women generally having long hair, or wearing makeup? Tell me where the biology is on that facet. That's gender. That's not biological sex. These are characteristics we apply in regards to what we consider feminine and masculine. Masculine is typically beards, features that are generally described as a masculine feature. And by that definition, we apply that standard of gender to a man. But when it comes to makeup, dresses, long hair, typical characteristics that are feminine, those are, by definition, society deems as women. Now, to address your second question, it's possible to offend a lot of people, as I already mentioned earlier. The question you have to ask yourself is a big factor here. Is someone doing it intentionally on the case of maliciousness? If someone is being maliciously, intentionally not using someone's pronouns, then that's a different subject, and the timer thing just came up again. Good God. That's the key factor, okay? The second thing is in regards to if you offend someone, you can offend anyone. If I call a Christian a Muslim, they could get offended by that. It's my opportunity to ask someone what is their appropriate designation for their identity. And if after that point, I still continuously, intentionally, maliciously, continuously use a pronoun that they don't appropriate, that's your decision, but understand you're doing it knowingly in a malicious intent. That's my take on that. Real quick, guys, I'm going to do something real quick. Yeah, this thing is stupid. Okay. So there's your answer. And then Instant Curry writes, yeah, but men are generally hairier. Yeah, not with long hair, though, Instant Curry. Sorry, that doesn't work out that way. Okay? They are hairier in other parts of the body, not on the top of their head. That's why I said long hair. But good attempt in conflating the two concepts. But let's go on to the next question. So the next question is, does a transgender person become a different person after transitioning? What is your guys' take on that question?
Yes.
Alex, perfect.
But yeah,
Depends on the person.
I guess so. Yeah, it's going to be vary by the individual, but the point of the transition is to be creating a shift in their personality. That's what they're trying to do.
That's not quite
what I was
right
trying to do.
That's not quite it either. One of the things I said very early on was that, well, I'm still the same person. And the interesting thing is a trans person I got to know said, well, you'll get over that soon enough. And it's true. I am not the same person I used to be. And I live in the same situation in the same household. So
I mean,
I'm sorry. They are reacting to me in the same way as I was. And it's frustrating because there's so much of me that changed when I changed. I wrote a song very early on called "I'm Still Me" that I wrote called "I'm Still Me." I said I'm gonna take the stand, and somebody heard that, and one of my trans band members heard it, and she said, "Yeah, you'll see."
And yet, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just more stubborn about this. I mean, ultimately, like, year to year, I'm a different person. I'm a different person than 2 years ago, when I was hit by the car, because I made the decision to try to be myself more. But I mean, if I'm being myself more, isn't that me just acting out in such a way that I would have if I wasn't repressing that? Like, they start getting into a really complicated argument about, well, then you get into a whole argument about identity.
Well, persistence of identity is one of the things that was asked early on, and that is such a difficult question to even approach.
And I disagreed with persistent identity. So I guess in that sense, transitioning has changed me, and obviously there have been slight effects in terms of on my personality based off of hormones, but a lot of it was just taking hormones as a means to an end, and that end is gender confirmation surgery.
And I think
I'm watching you off in the distance.
Yeah, and I think the most important factor to answer the question, it is yes, but I think the important issue that people need to relate to it is the steps and the experiences that someone has in regards to affirming their identity, in regards to how it's always consistently changing, but some facets are not. That correlates to such changes. So you have a basis, you have a support, you have a foundation to who you are from your early life, and then you take those experiences that you had in your previous life and adapt them into your continuously changing identity. Do you guys agree with that or no?
Better. Yeah, better. And I'm sorry I'm not looking on screen, which is why I turned the screen off before. I'm trying. I did some stuff I have. All of a sudden, I realized I have to get done, and I'm trying to do two things at once. So
that's okay, Christy. I understand. What about you?
I'd also say better. So yay.
We're going to continue on what we're talking about. So Instant Curry's back on, and he asked another question. What is our opinions on children changing genders? What's your guys' opinions on that?
Get a clarification. because I don't think there's a way that this question is framed that becomes a gotcha at one point.
Yeah, I would say that I'd be much more comfortable answering on the principle of it's going to depend on the local ordinances. It's going to depend on the local laws and the local customs. And it's going to depend on the local medical community's recognition of, what happens, and puberty blockers and things like that, which can put off a decision for a while.
Yeah, so Alex, before I answer, do you have a take on this?
Yeah, so I think a lot of stuff that gets conflated with regards to this. So obviously, children don't medically change their physiology until age 12 or 10. Fuck, I forgot the year. I'm not as aware of puberty blockers in terms of what age is prescribed, but
I don't know enough either.
It involves. I know there's, a minimum of a year of a screening, which means numerous psychological visits, and anything before that is just going to be in terms of wearing clothes and how the child identifies.
Oh, puberty blockers are these cool things that they've got, which basically they can put your puberty into suspension. It does not proceed. None of the advents proceed until later when they drop the puberty blockers, and then it just seems to happen extra fast, and there's no real consequence.
And going with that consensus, here's my take on this. And I kind of generally agree with everyone's standard here. But my answer to this question is very simple. I go with what the scientific consensus says. I'm not an expert. I'm a layman. So as far as my understanding goes, if it is a person or if it's a child that is getting the medical attention that they are required from a psychologist, and they are getting the expertise in this field in the appropriate manner, and it's been demonstrated that this scientifically and medically is what the child requires, then by every standard there should be no problem. That's my answer. I don't know if anybody disagrees with that take.
No.
Yeah, no.
As far as my understanding goes, scientifically, medically, I don't know the new complete nuances. I don't know if it's what effects it has. I can't see if the effects are negative or positive. I don't know, because again, I'm not a medical professional. But,
from everything I've seen, obviously, I don't think it's not like. I mean, any potential negative consequence depends on the puberty blocker, and even then, it's only if it's taken for more than 5 years, and so it's one of those things where it could just there might be some puberty blockers that aren't as good as other puberty blockers in terms of health, but like that's nitpicky nuance.
So Instant Curry asked again, do you not think the child should be an adult before they're giving hormone stuff and all? So let me answer this real quick. I'm not a medical
It's not hormones.
But real quick, hold on, real quick. Let's not even go there. Instant Curry, we may have opinions in regards to our own different positions on this, and I think we generally agree, but I think most of our opinions is we don't know. We're not medical professionals. We are not doctors. We are not endocrinologists, okay? When you're for me, I don't know who you are. You're just some individual on the internet. For you to make a determination, for you to make a claim that if we should make this basis as an adult before we actually seek treatment if they have dysphoria. You don't know that either. You're not a medical professional, as far as my knowledge or as my appearance goes. So when you make a determination, when you make a claim that on the basis of this, when you have no expertise in this field, no offense, I'm going to be blunt, that's pure ignorance. I would say that most of us here would also say that, I mean, you guys agree with that consensus, that we're not experts on this?
No, but in order to be trans in America, in order to be trans, you have to be at some point.
I mean,
publicly trans. Sorry.
I mean, you don't have to be an expert, but you do have to generally know some stuff.
No, I think you do need to be an expert to make a claim on what things.
Oh, no, you need to be an expert to make a claim. I just meant to be openly trans.
Oh,
you don't need to be an expert.
To be trans, yeah. So
that was my disagreement. I was disagreeing with Christy. No.
Oh, I apologize.
It was a mild nitpicky disagreement with Christy.
Quite all right. Quite all right.
So, what is your take? Perfect. Do you have any take on this? Do you agree? Or
that was pretty well put.
Yeah. So they're continuously right. Nah, but you can be yourself without damaging your health. How do you know they're damaging their health, Curry? How do you know that? Again, you're making a claim and with no expertise in this field. So now that you continue, hold on, real quick, Alex. I'm going to address this and we're going to continue on because this individual's kind of wasting time. If you're going to make state opinion, that's fine. But when you continuously making claims that we're damaging our health, when you are not a medical professional, you are not an expert in this field of either endocrinology or anything when it comes to the relation, it's not a double standard at all. He writes double standard. It's not a double standard at all. Okay? The double standard is making a claim like you're doing and stating that this is a fact, that something is damaging your health when you have no idea if you're not an expert in this field. So you're the one setting the double standard, and we're going to continue on the discussion now. I don't know if it's damaging the health. Okay, so they're right. You don't know if it's I don't know insecurity. That's what. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you have doctors. So,
correct.
In general, almost every medication that you can take has a risk of damaging your health, and it's prescribed if it's there to prevent worse damage. Like chemotherapy, if a child has cancer, they get chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is damaging to your health, but you know what's more damaging to that person's health? Cancer. And if you're talking about depression, suicide is more damaging than taking antidepressants. So, like, if you to just say that something is damaging, everything has potential to be damaging. You need more of a reason than that.
And that's the problem when you're making these claims, Instant Curry. When individuals like you make claims in regards to what is definite, like it's going to do this, it's going to do this, it's going to do this. When you're not an expert or medical professional in this field, then no offense, you're applying your own double standard. You're being hypocritical. So feel free to educate yourself. Go get a college degree. Go get a PhD. And please feel free to enter our show anytime once you've gotten that education on the actual studies, or the actual info on what HRT or any of the things we've discussed actually does to an individual. But until then, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm going to move on to the next point.
Yeah.
The next question is, why should we care about someone's personal identity? That's the next question.
Oh, it's actually an interesting question.
Anybody want to approach it first?
Because it's there.
That's a simplistic, straight to the point.
I don't think you need to have a particular interest to be able to show respect Like if it's something that someone else cares about, and then you can just be put in the tiny bit of work to be respectful, and try to make them happier. Like you need to have a strong argument for there being a detrimental effect to accepting that person's identity, and oftentimes it's just claimed without any evidence that it is detrimental.
And what about you, Christy? Do you have any take on this?
I'm one of those people who knew very, very, very early on, and I had to keep putting, and I'm about to turn 55 in, what time is it now? 3 days. And I came out in 2018. So I actually came out in 1977 or 7. I came out in 1980, 1981, and went back in. And to speak absolutely frank, to well, I goddamn wish that there had been puberty blockers. I had gynecomastia, which means I got very large breast development first, and then it went away, and then I had the rest of the stuff. My diary entry, and I've said this on a number of occasions, is my body is trying to fix itself. I have attempted suicide more than 15 times in my life, and not since I started on hormones. Not once. Not even really thought about it. There is so much about transitioning that fixes things. It won't fix, I'm still bipolar, I'm still a lot of things, but I would have liked to have gone through my life without having to constantly be on the verge of ending it. And if you want a better answer than that, I don't have one.
And I think that's a pretty good answer because, like I said, for me, my answer to this is that each person's individual experience determines this facet in regards to their identity. And without that experience, without this perception that we receive throughout reality, then we can't really truly know who we truly are. Like even I sometimes philosophically go with the question that I don't believe that someone could truly know themselves because we're always consistently changing. It's never static when it comes to a lot of facets when it comes to someone's identity. And because of that factor, accepting that notion, accepting the improbability of ever truly knowing yourself completely is, to me, some people are frightened by that notion, but for me, I find it to be incredibly exhilarating because there's always new things about my personality, new things that I've yet to discover that I may not know now, but I may find out later in my life. I don't know if anybody disagrees with that, but
no, not at all.
No, I will say before I forget, because I'm not going to see you for the next 3 days. Happy birthday!
Thank you.
Yes, happy birthday, Christy.
I made it, and that's my favorite thing about my birthday this year.
So the next question, and I think this is a good question, is there a conflict between identity and belongingness? Like when it comes to like us grouping with identities based on identity, is there a conflict between that and the self-identity?
Oh, yes, there can be, but there's also it's a conflict between the identity that you group yourselves with others. Everybody is a conflict between their need to feel unique and an individual and a need to feel part of the group. Everybody is some compromise amongst those.
Yeah.
Good on take. What about you, Christy and Alex? Do you guys have any opinions on that?
I like it. I like his answer.
What about you, Alex? Any take?
I think that. No, I think Perfict got like
good answer, Perfect.
A good answer.
Pretty much stumped us all. Okay, so.
Oh, also, Perfict. You've typed your name as Perfect.
That's the way he spells it.
Oh, really?
No, you did put an extra E.
Oh, didn't?
No, he did put an extra E.
Yeah, he did put an extra. It doesn't matter. It's okay. Well, like I said, I'm gonna be uploading this and fixing it later, so I'll take care of it. This is the next question. This is actually a pretty good one. Can identity be an ideology, or could we claim there is such a thing as identity ideology? So I'm going to repeat the question one more time. Can identity be an ideology, and can there or can we claim that something as such a thing as identity ideology? What is everyone's take on that? You don't know. You don't know.
So I don't. Obviously, no ideology could be. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say obviously. I don't think that you can have an ideology based around identity. I mean, that's sort of like an ideology based on describing yourself, and usually there are a few more factors in. So while you could have an aspect of identity in an ideology, it's weird to describe identity as an ideology. So like Black Panther movement back in the 70s. That was a movement where identity was a part of their ideology, and that ideology of needing to protect people needing to protect themselves against the police. People of color needing to protect themselves against the police. Yeah, sorry.
No,
go ahead. I didn't really have any more.
What about you, Christy? You're perfect. Do you think that identity can be an ideology, or do you think that, or do you with the claim as such a thing as identity ideology? Do you think so, or?
I'd have to be convinced. That sounds a little bit weird.
Well,
I can't put my head around that.
We get accused of it all the time.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a kind of a weird question. I think Alex hit it pretty hard. But I'll just go on to the next question because I want to be fair, because that's something that the question is not really well posed. But we'll go to the next question. So this one goes: can individual identity be corrected or overcome based on a norming of a group?
No.
So I guess let me rephrase it. Can someone's identity change if they start belonging to a group?
Yes, but it wouldn't always necessarily be a good thing. But it's hard to accept that it also, you have to go, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing either.
It depends. So it's a bit complicated with that. So obviously, if you're talking about the original question, which involved norming of people, then if that involves repressing aspects of their personality to try to appear normal, that's not going to work. It's going to work temporarily, drastically increase the suicide rate, and likely involve the person changing who they are back. But that being said, there's also aspects like you can form an identity around a group. Like if you're in a cult, and I think that's the sort of argument they're trying to that often gets made against people who are transgender, even if they transitioned alone and didn't know anyone in the transgender community, it's still made out to be like some sort of cult. And in that sense, people have already been normalized into a sort of thing that's not what they would normally do, and that's sort of denormalizing them.
Yeah, see, for me, when it comes to this notion, I generally agree with you, Alex. And the only thing I would add to that is, for me, identity, going and also ties in with what Perfict's saying. I agree with him, but also I'm going to add something on top of his, too. When it comes to someone's identity, for me, there's three different characteristics. There's innate identity, something that you can never change, something that's always going to be a part of you. For example, this is a very bad example, but something that's innate. For example, someone can love chocolate. That's a part of their identity. They can say, I'm a chocolate lover. Go ahead.
Oh, that's a terrible example, because people change their tastes all the time. Like, I love eggs now, and I hated them like when I was a kid. Like, shit like that happens.
But Alex, okay, so let me explain it in a better way. There are certain things that you will always love. You've always loved as a kid. Okay, those things. I'm trying to think of a good example of that, but there are certain things in life that are innate to your identity that are constant. They are never changing. Then there are facets of your identity that are extrinsic. So which means it's coming from some form of outside or external force. And a good example of that is what Perfict mentioned in regards to religion. Religion, you can identify, for example, as a Christian, but I would argue that someone doesn't become a Christian intrinsically. They become a Christian or a religious in a religion based on an external force that convinced them to adapt this identity. So, and then the other facet is there are certain things that are a correlation between both. That you could adapt a portion of your identity that you could have gotten from an outside source, but it's just something that you never knew about yourself. It's like something of self-discovery, and that's kind of where I'm getting at. But does anybody disagree?
I do, but I can't put it into words. It just sucks. I'm being useless this round. Don't be
like it. Now, like what part do you disagree, Christy?
There are tendencies. If you are going, when you mention religion and specifically, there are certain intrinsic things that will make you more likely to be religious, which are just brain patterns that are more likely to make you religious. So you can't even say that is separated from innate identity.
So I make sure so this is maybe something we disagree with. I disagree with you, Christian. Here's why.
Right,
When it
sorry.
comes to someone's identity in regards to a religious structure, I would easily argue that if you take a child or a baby, they aren't. I've seen this discussion on Twitter a while ago, but people were saying, like, for example, babies are atheists. Well, babies aren't really anything. They're not atheists. They're not anything. They're just whatever. But they eventually become an atheist or a non-believer based on external forces or their own intrinsic research through topics coming up. So for me, when I hear when someone says that a person has a tendency of their identity intrinsically for the religious, I disagree. I would argue that from my research, there is no. You have patterns in our behavior that determine based on our recognition of reality, and we do make things up. We do have imagination, but I wouldn't say those are intrinsic to making us believe in a religious structure or a supernatural being. I mean, I don't know where that justification comes in to say that.
Go on, Christy.
No, have at, because.
Okay, so there are various things that, if you're talking about, some things are set pretty hard line into your personality when you're young. So even if you're not born with that, you can have it. The example I can think of is the one kid. I don't know what country it was or what, who was like raised by dogs basically, and had a lot of aspects of her personality that like she couldn't process reading or like maintain being able to learn to read and just like a lot of basic shit like that.
I think Germany.
I'll take your word for it. But I don't remember the country. But in that sense, it is. It could be possible for certain aspects of your thinking to be drilled in enough as a child. To make, at the very least, makes it more difficult. Now, that being said, if you're calling it intrinsic, that implies that it's not changeable, and religion's a lot easier to change than the being raised by dogs thing.
Yeah, so the reason why I disagree with the position that Christy put out, and again, I say this respectfully, Christy, I'm not saying that you're wrong, I could be wrong. But the reason why I disagree is if you look at the very characteristics when it comes to the supernatural belief, it's a basis of, when it comes to people making claims of justifications of the supernatural, they are making this based on pure imagination. It's pure notion, pure idea. There is no correlation in reality based on our perceptions of the supernatural. It's purely made up. So for it to be intrinsic, it has to be relatable into regards to that person's perceptions. Yet if someone cannot perceive such a thing in reality, then it's pure imagination. Hence, it does not exist. So
if a person were to, let's say, learn based their mental status. Oh, I'm seeing that fucking timer again. Anyways, if their mental status, they didn't do much corollary stuff, and it tended to learn or learned best specifically by being taught it. Then that could be a factor.
Yeah, but again, I agree that it's something that they have to be taught or be exposed to. But for it to be intrinsic, for it to be innate into their personality, for it to be something that is always with them ever since they were a child, or even when they were a baby and they were going to grow into it, it would have to be, like, for example, if you put a person on an island and this child was on the island, for it to be considered to be intrinsic, for it to be considered possible without any external force, then you would have to provide ample justification how someone would identify religiously without with purely by just self-reasoning and self-rationalization. And I just don't see that. I really don't.
Well,
I just don't know how someone
yeah,
can go
but
from
I mean
step one to
that
step
was
two.
why that same argument is why your chocolate example was terrible, because people's tastes change over time, and whether or not you like something isn't intrinsic. It's based on whether or not you've consumed that product before. If you're on an island with only just coconuts, there's no way that you would have an intrinsic desire for chocolate.
I agree. But again, you would have... Okay, so here's a better example. You're right that the example with chocolate is a bad example. We're talking about a notion in reality in regards to something that, again, humans, I would argue, have never perceived. We've seen chocolate, and it's pretty fathomable. If I gave someone a chocolate bar, that they would generally probably like it. Maybe they won't because maybe they're allergic, or maybe they just don't like chocolate. But we've seen chocolate. We've perceived chocolate. We know chocolate exists. We know other people have enjoyed chocolate in some facet. Maybe their parents enjoy chocolate, and they don't. Maybe they'll enjoy chocolate because it's perceivable that their parents enjoyed it. So again, these are correlations that we can do. These are inferences we can do of someone's identity in regards to what they will accept externally from themselves and adapt it into their identity. But unless there is some relatable factor in reality, then that means that it's not intrinsic. It's extrinsic, because they have to be exposed to it in some way, not intrinsic to themselves. Does that make sense? I mean, does anybody disagree?
Well, I mean, religion had to have been formed at some point.
Correct. But it was based purely on someone else sharing their notion to someone else. It wasn't intrinsic to themselves at all times.
Unfortunately, there is a I mean to get into it would be really, 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 really long.
We can go into it in a different time, so we can actually do a future episode when we talk about religiosity or religion when it comes to the trans community. So we can go to that in a different episode if you want, Christy. We can hit that up in another time.
Okay, that'd be good.
But I'll let you. I didn't hear. So I didn't get a chance to make sure everyone. But do you have any take on this, Perfict, or?
Nope, I'm solid.
Okay.
You guys are doing a good discussion. You hardly need me.
Okay, so let me see. The next question comes from. What is the? No, that's not a good one. I'm going through this real quick. Give me a second, guys. Let's see if anybody's in the live chat real quick. Oh. Nope, we lost Instant Curry. He's gone.
Well, I mean, he had to go and learn a bunch, so there was no more time to listen to us.
He's clearly off following your mandate.
Well, mandate is a strong word. Suggestion.
Strong suggestion, yeah.
Okay,
It's a very strong suggestion.
This is an interesting question, so I'm going to try to pose it as best as possible because it's not really good here, but I'm going to try to pose it. If someone says, "If I only don't know myself," isn't that contradictory? That's the question. That's the way he's posing it. So if someone says, "If I only don't know myself," is that a contradictory statement?
If I only don't know myself.
But real quick, I want to hear Perfict's take on this. What do you think, Perfict? Do you think that's...
Yeah, it sounds like a deepity to me. But I mean, if I only don't know myself, you go, well, then there would be lots of other things that you would know, but you wouldn't necessarily know what you don't know. So it all boils down to the same sorts of questions about knowledge. I don't see how it being about yourself would make it special.
Yeah, like I said, it's a very interesting question this person posed. But Alex, Christy, do you guys have any take on it?
I don't, because I only partially understand it. So,
So
yeah,
you
similar.
You guys are tagging out? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. this is we trust Perfict's expertise in this particular subject.
Okay, so here's a good question, and this one's posed. What is an accurate explanation of the polarization in identity? So I'll repeat the question.
Wait, what do you mean polarization in identity?
So how people can have like two different views on things when it comes to their own identity. There are multiple, like for example, if someone in a group, like if you have a group consciousness, for example, like Democrats, you can identify as a Democrat, but there are people that have different theories on how Democrats should do things in regards to that identity. So how do you explain that polarization? How do you explain those conflicts when it comes to someone identifying with that's a bad example. I'm really bad with bad examples, but that's
no, you're really great at bad examples.
Yes, I'm really great at bad examples. But that's what they're basically asking is how do you deal with conflicts when it comes to someone identifying in a group with different forms of characterizations of that identity.
This is the Blair White question again, isn't it?
No, this is actually on ResearchGate on topic of identity. I'm going to post this in the description tab later after the show once I upload it, so everyone sees where I'm pulling these questions from.
Okay.
Different people are different and describe themselves differently because they had a different life, and that life is determining their descriptions. Like, if you describe, let's say you describe a firearm as a pistol, and another person describes it as a handgun.
Real quick, guys. I just wanted to say this. I linked the actual page onto your right. If you notice on the chat, that's the actual page I'm on right now with these questions. That's where I've been pulling from, just for your knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the vagaries are a little difficult because they require like hours and hours of answers, and I'm trying to keep it short but.
Yeah, no, I like them. I like the questions.
What about you, Perfict?
Yeah, I've liked the questions. They seem fine.
Okay.
I would say, sometimes they are a little vague. You're going,
they are.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, and like I said, I'll link that one more time. It'll be in the description tab, so you can go over the questions. There's some answers that are posed here. So this is the last question, and we're going to do the wrap up. The question is, what is the difference between narrative identity and someone's life identity?
That's a good question.
I don't know what either of those mean.
Okay, so let me put it in a better way, Alex. What's the difference between someone's, for example, a narrative identity is I tell you a story about a situation that occurred in my life. I'm telling you, like right now, like I told you about my situation with my mom, and that gives you an indication of who that is to me. Like that makes you see who I am and I represent. Then there is your life story in regards to your identity toward the entire whole. So what's the difference between your identity on the now versus your identity toward the entire whole? Does that make sense? Is that a better way of explaining it?
I'm still confused, but someone else can start talking about this and maybe I'll pick it up.
So, I'll try to break it down one more time. So the difference between narrative identity and life identity, okay? You identify who you are today based on all the things that you've experienced your entire life. Yet you can also identify on temporary occasions based on short-term experiences. So for example, at one time, I was considered a reactionary. I don't consider myself a reactionary anymore because that's no longer a part of my identity. But the things I experienced in the past in regards to, for example, being, I don't know a good example, but it's like certain things in my life that I'm still, like I'm a gamer. I'm still a gamer. And does that make sense now, Alex?
I think I'll understand it better once someone else actually goes through it. I mean, I understand better, but like, if someone else, please, someone answer.
Perfect, Chris. Do you guys have any take on that?
Let Perfict do it first because I'm more curious about his take than mine.
Okay, just the narrative identity is going to be, that's always a thing, but it's never a big thing, and you never get to go to sleep on the same personality you woke up with. There's always been editing and changing that's gone on during the day. That you did it. Other people did it. That you're never quite exactly the same thing. Ever.
Yeah.
But a narrative, it remains the same. If I'm telling the same story with the same meaning that I told 30 years ago, then that identity is still the same.
Correct. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please continue.
Then that's part of that's what's part of the point of telling those stories, is to be preserving that piece of identity of yourself.
Yes.
Are you understanding a little bit more, Chris, Alex, in regards to this?
A tiny bit. I'm just gonna pass on this and let Christy.
Well, yeah, the entire idea of narrative identity is to, even if you're not the same person, and I'm going to just rephrase what Perfict said because Perfict said it the way it is. Narrative identity just shows that while you have differences from day to day, the story that you continue on with is a story of that explains who you are in a more linear and cohesive fashion. Yeah, let's go with that.
Well, my take on that is I think narrative is important because it helps define to other individuals their experiences in life. But at the same token, you can't also bypass the very notions that make you who you are in regards to the moment. So I like Perfict mentioned, and he phrased it in a good way, that it's important that we respect the past, but also remember that these influences of the past don't purely define us of who we are today. People probably agree or disagree.
Yep. I like how you polished it up.
Yeah, and it's how narrative identity becomes how we got from one place to another. Is also another way to put it. Unless I'm wrong, Perfict, and this is one that I'm not, I may not have right. So I just want to double check that I got it.
No, that sounds good.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, I think we've hit up some pretty hard questions in regards to identity. We've talking in lengths about trans identity and different facets of the philosophy of identity. I want to thank all my co-hosts for joining me tonight. I know this is a new time, and I appreciate the gesture. But as we always do, let's start off with Perfict. Anything going on next week? Usually you don't. I know you still don't have a channel. Is that correct?
Nope. Nothing to promote.
Gotcha. And what about either Christy or Alex? I guess you guys have anything going on this upcoming week, or do you have any plans? Or
it's my birthday Wednesday.
Happy birthday,
Yay.
Christy! Everyone.
Happy birthday!
Christy, happy birthday! I guess any plans for your birthday?
What's that?
Any plans for your birthday?
Lauren and I are going out to dinner. Same place we always go when we have an anniversary or something like that. And so this is, I've had to share my birthday first with my mother and then with my child because things work out weird sometimes. But so it's going to be nice to have a small birthday thing by just me and someone else. Also, finally, Jesse Gender and Jesse Earl, or Jesse Gender, depending on where you encounter her. We finally have a scheduled time to do our interview. So I've been trying to get this done for the last month or so. So we finally have it. So it'll be up Monday night. Yay.
Awesome. And do you have any projects or any videos or interviews coming up in the next week, Christy, that people should know about? Or
no, I'm going to finally put up Identity Part 2, but I would like you to link to Identity Part 1 and the other song. If I said, if that's okay, since you're going to re-upload it anyway.
Yeah, of course. You send me the link in a DM on Twitter, and I'll be happy to put it up for you. Okay.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Always. And I think I already have it. Let me check. Give me a second. I apologize. Did you send that to me? I think you sent it.
No, I sent a bunch of other stuff to you just so.
Yeah, you did. I have it. No, that's not the. No, yeah, you're right. That's the.
I hope you enjoyed it. I sent Eliani a bunch of Laura Jane Grace, and because
that's what I was like. But you did. Yeah, we'll go over this later. But yeah, for sure. And I'm going to be posting that link for everyone to check out in regards to Christy's music. And you said you're going to be doing part 2, correct?
Yeah, I got part 2 is finished. It just has to be actually recorded.
Gotcha. All right, Christy. And Alex, anything going on this week or coming up, or?
Well, I'm trying to do that one video. I've just had to deal with life stuff. And basically, in relation to the camps going on now, essentially, we had like a whole long conversation, and I'm going to use parts of that. I just wasn't able to get any of that done right away. And as for recently, I really I'm not used to strange Twitch encounters. And by strange Twitch encounters, I mean someone saying in my Twitch chat just a couple minutes ago, fuck Jews, I hate Jews, I hate Jews. I banned them right away. I mean, that's trolly, but like, it's also...
I gotta make sure to edit that out now because...
Yeah.
So, for future reference, if you find bigots that do stuff like that, just don't emphasize it because, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I banned them because...
They're bigots?
Yeah.
Very good idea.
Yeah, sorry.
That sort of works, but you really can't give them any notice.
Well, I mean that's kind of gets into that gets into a whole conversation about the sort of ignoring bullies makes them go away, which is not true of bigotry.
No.
But yeah, apparently they noticed the fact that I was Jewish in my profile, born and raised Jewish in my profile, because I can't imagine another reason for them to say anything like that.
Yeah,
or maybe it's just a Sunday night. That's what they say on Sunday nights.
I'm just. It disgusts me how people are that. I don't know, but I'm sorry you went through that, Alex. And hopefully.
It was just weird. People. I'm somewhat used to people saying hateful things to me on Twitch. I'm fairly desensitized to it. Unfortunately, I haven't had the wonderful time that I had one time on Twitch when I had when I was trying to get to affiliate and I was just like, okay, I need an average of 3 viewers. There's like 5 viewers on. I'm just gonna like keep this up and keep talking to them to up my view, keep my view count up. I'm like, this is a total positive. Like, and then I kept like, I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm in the habit of making fun of people who.
Well, that's the ironic
are
thing. A
insulting
lot of
to
these
me.
people that come on a troll, they don't understand that you're helping the actual people that you're trying to troll with the algorithm. So I don't get how the people understand that. But as for myself, I'm Eliani Clark. I have my Twitter. I also have my YouTube. I don't upload very much. This is my primary thing. Of course, Christy and Alex have their YouTubes and Twitter accounts. Look forward to their content. I'm going to be posting it in the description tab below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Anybody who watches later on, apologize for the conflub over the technical errors. I will be editing this later on, so we get a little bit more of a measured live stream. And you guys have a great night. Say goodbye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye. Love you.
Peace.
Wait.
Goodbye, my beautiful lovelies, is how I've been ending everything.
Have a great night, guys.